Okay, I'm just gonna talk through some stuff, and then Olivia's gonna tell me we have 5 minutes, and then we're good, right? So this curriculum that we're debuting, literally you are the first people to see this curriculum. As we were driving up here, we were finishing it, right? So when we mean finishing it, we mean editing it. It was done a while ago, and then we just laid it out and made it look pretty. Okay. So this curriculum is based on the book Journey for Justice, The Life of Larry Itliong. If you do not have the book, that's bad. You should have the book. The curriculum doesn't mean anything without that text. So you gotta get the book. That's number one. So I'm Dawn Mabalan's friend, and she asked me when she was writing the book, Journey for Justice, The Life of Larry Itliong, when she asked me to write an accompanying curriculum. And when your friend asks you, you usually just say yes. I told her, though, that I wasn't going to do this without a team. And so I developed a dream team. And I'm super, super excited to introduce you to this dream team. The dream team, there's 3 out of 4 of us here today, but the one person who's not here, I'll introduce her first. Her name is Daisy Lopez, and she is an elementary school teacher, third grade teacher at Longfellow Elementary School. And she grew up in Union City, and she went to Logan, right? She went to Logan High School, and so she definitely had the experiences that we wanted. She was also a PEP teacher. She taught both elementary and middle school. Also part of the team, right next to me, is Aldrich Sabak. Some fans. And Aldrich, I'm gonna say a bunch of stuff. He actually teaches at Edison High School, the high school that he went to, in Stockton, California. Also, Dawn went to Edison. Did you go to Edison? And then Dylan went to Edison. Edison produces some amazing Pinoys and Pinays. And we happen to have one on our team. And so, yeah, he's amazing. He's taught all the way from the babies to the elders. I meant to point at myself, elders. And Aldrich, he's just an amazing, amazing teacher. Both Daisy, Aldrich, and Eileen were all my students at some point at San Francisco State. And so it's really nice to be able to call them colleagues now and be able to work with them. And then Aldrich also went to UCLA, got his credential there, and then came back home. That's what we want people to do, right? We want them to come back home and teach, in the places in which they grew up. That's amazing. And so that's Aldrich. And then next to Aldrich, you have Eileen Pagtikan. Yes. And she also grew up in Union City. Yeah? I forgot to say I grew up near there too, in Fremont. But Eileen went to Logan High School as well. She went to then San Francisco State and then Cal State East Bay for her credential, and currently teaches at the famous Itliong Veracruz Middle School. Yeah, our team is solid. Like, we tried to hit it all. We got elementary, middle, high school, college, and then we really wanted to make sure that we represented the communities in which we were going to focus on. And so we're really trying to tell our own stories. Our framework is specifically ethnic studies pedagogy, not just ethnic studies, but ethnic studies pedagogy. In the curriculum, you can probably click on the intro and then you can read all about it. But our main thing is really pushing forth those questions that Dawn is putting in front of us, those 3 questions. And then we also developed this curriculum using what we call the ethnic studies praxis story plot. I wish I had a slide, because then it would look cool, right? Thank you for the slide. Nice. So even before that we did the ethnic studies, he's going to show his little tiny screen. Before I even let them, because they're going to talk about the ethnic studies praxis story plot, we have this is a 2-week unit. And it's roughly 8 lessons with some additional resources. The curriculum is about 119 pages. We spent some time doing this work. It's intense. We really put a lot of thought into how this should be done. The very first lesson in the unit was written by myself and Don Mabalon in 2005. And that lesson is specifically to give a counter-narrative, to provide a counter-narrative on what it means to be a farm worker. So instead of looking at them as poor farm workers, we wanted that very first lesson to be focused on the fact that they are dignified and determined. So the very first lesson sets the tone. The second lesson after that, then we go into introducing who is Larry Itliong, and then you read the book. And the third lesson is then this thing called the ethnic studies praxis story plot. And then we go in through the lessons that, that are very much about going deep into the book. And so I'm going to hand it off to these amazing teachers right here.
Once again, my name is Aldrich Sabak. At Edison High School in Southside Stockton, California. I teach English, English language development, as well as ethnic studies through Little Manila Rising, through our LMASP program, as well as our sister program. So I wanted to go over parts of the format. For each of our lessons, we start with guiding questions, so things to think about. Questions that will help lead discussion, help students think further, help think more critically, and also questions that could possibly be answered by the time the unit lesson is over. So after that, things we'll focus on are mind. What should students take away conceptually? What things should they think about that will help change their lives? And then body. For each of our lessons, we focus on body, meaning skills. What physical, tangible skills can you use after this lesson, right? No matter if you're in elementary, middle school, high school, college, there should be some skills you gain, right? It's not just a lot of talk, like there should be some things you can do after the lesson. And then soul. How is this relevant to you? Why should this matter? I think as an educator, oftentimes when I work with colleagues and peers, we teach lessons and it's like, okay, so how does this affect me? Why does this matter? And I feel like if you as a teacher cannot answer that or help your students come to some kind of conclusion, there's something wrong with the lesson, your practice, with your pedagogy, your methodology. So for us, thinking about how is this relevant? How will this affect me? How will this affect my community? How does this affect the world, society, right? And then the last thing for every lesson that there needs to be an emphasis on for our curriculum is critical leadership. How will students take some control, have some agency to create change, right? See themselves as agents of social change in their neighborhoods, their school, their community. So a lot of these things are elements for every single lesson, and every single lesson will have different things laid out that teachers and the class, the students can reflect on. Eileen, if you want to add on to the next parts.
Sure. As you can see, it follows, so there's the ethnic studies story praxis plot.
That's right.
ESPSP? Okay. And it's another variation of the traditional story plot. So since kindergarten, going into this schooling system, we learn literature as like there's an exposition, setting, character, we go rising action, we go to climax, following action, and then what'd you learn, the resolution. If you turn to one of the slides in there, there's a picture of all of them, and each lesson is a point in the ethnic studies practice story plot. And we start off with exposing the problem. So instead of exposition, we identify the problems that exist in the story, in the society. Then we turn to the rising action. Instead of rising action, we find the oppressive actions. What is exacerbating that problem and making it more oppressive? What are the different elements there? And the third the climax is known as the trauma, the tension, the trauma. And as I teach my kids, it's the craziest part in the story. Can't get any more crazy than that. And again, remember that there are guiding questions to help students kind of see through that ethnic studies lens. We go into following action, but instead it's about how does the characters take action? How do they resist and how do they heal? And then it ends with the revolution and reflection. So that again goes back to the connection, the critical leadership and how to connect to their soul. And so we look at the characters and build make the build connection and relevancy there. Is there anything that I'm missing that we could talk about? Cool. Each lesson is broken down into 4 parts. The first part is cultural energizer. Is there anything you'd like to bring about the energizer?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
It was easier with the PowerPoint. Anyways, so before I mention the cultural energizer, one thing that we have an emphasis on every single lesson is critical vocabulary, right? So I think oftentimes a lot of teachers and educators will think, oh, they're not ready for this language. You know, there are elements of that is true, but it also depends on your scaffolding, how you break it apart for them. One thing about our lessons is that because I teach high school, Eileen teaches middle school, Daisy Lopez teaches elementary, a lot of these lessons are flexible. You know, like as an educator, you want to see how you can input and switch things around to make ethnic studies relevant to students pretty much of all ages. So we'll have critical vocabulary. This vocabulary is vocabulary directly pulled from Journey for Justice. It's also vocabulary pool that is related to the content and the topic, so you'll have that. For every single lesson, the first part is the cultural energizer. When you're teaching, and sometimes educators will put something to get the class ready, often it's not relevant or responsive to what's going on. So with each cultural energizer, we want teachers to realize that whatever you're doing needs to be directly related to the main part of the lesson or directly related to the theme. So if you're going over vocabulary, if you have some kind of activity to make students more thirsty or question what's going to be happening, those are all the parts of the cultural energizer. These are also, I don't know if we mentioned this, these are all part of the PEP format, Pinay Pinoy Educational Partnerships, which we all are coming from. So all of these are essential, integral parts. If you want to talk about the next part.